This is a demonstration that will show you how to create a hemline along a sleeve that the pattern has been built in to do a fold up or a self hem. One of the first couple of things that we want to identify before we get started is the pattern calls to do some stay stitching just along the top so that it doesn't ravel as you undo it, because this is the hemline of the sleeve. So this is where your wrist would set into it, and then it would be enclosed in here. But just to save on pattern space, the sleeve is not extended up into the upper arm bicep area to have a full cap, a cap curve along the top of the sleeve. So we're going to do a row of stay stitching along the top of this sleeve pattern, and then we're also going to have a 1.5 inch hem. And we are going to use 5/8 inch seam allowances along the side. So make sure that you have your pattern just within arm's distance here so you can reach that. One of the first things that I would maybe recommend doing is I notched on both of my sides where that 1.5 inch seam line or hemline was. But if you didn't, what might be a good step to do is to go ahead and use your ruler and mark that 1.5 inch hemline. So I'm going to go ahead and do that before I have everything all enclosed and I can't see that hemline anymore. So I'm just going to, I would use like your tailor's chalk or a pin or something just to go ahead and mark that on the wrong side of the fabric. I really need to sharpen my pencil because it doesn't have a good point on it. So I have that marked now and at 1.5 inches. And then first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and put that stay stitching in so that I don't have to fight it when I close my underarm seam up here in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and do that row of stay stitching about 1/8 inch from the top edge of that sleeve. And again, we're doing this at our regular stitch length, which is 2 1/4, 2 1/2. I'm not going to do any back stitching at the front of this stay stitching line, and I'm also not going to do any back stitching at the end. And I'm going to trim those threads about 1/4 inch, leave about 1/4 inch thread tail because that's going to end up in a seam line anyway. So, but we just want to make sure that the sleeve doesn't lose its shape. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we want to go ahead and close this sleeve at the underarm seam or along the inside of your wrist / forearm area. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some pins in along that side there just to hold everything in place. And again, our pattern said that we're going to be stitching at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And as you can see, once it hits that hemline area, it cuts back, and it cuts back, the pattern shape does, and that's going to accommodate for the shaping of the actual sleeve. On the other samples that we'll be doing, you'll notice that they're straight up and down boxes, but in all actuality, when you do have a sleeve, it is rarely ever going to have that shape. So I wanted you to have some practice viewing what having an angled hem and having to turn that back onto itself. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this underarm, forearm inside area at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to do back stitching at the top and bottom of this stitch line. And as I approach those pins, I'm going to go ahead and stop, raise my presser foot, and continue along the way. And once I hit that hemline marking that I drew in, I am going to raise up my presser foot and turn my sample a little bit because it is angled, to make sure that the raw edge is running right against that 5/8 of an inch. And I'm going to back stitch again when I get to the bottom. Alright, then I'm going to raise my presser foot up, pull out my sample, and trim those thread tails close to the fabric. The next step that you're going to want to do is probably press these seam allowances open. I'm just going to do a quick finger press so that I don't have to cut away from the video and I can just keep on moving forward. I think that this would, you can probably do a finger press for right now to be able to move forward with your project as well. And then you can do a final pressing using the sleeve roll. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just finger press that open. And then what we do next is we want to turn our sample inside out, so we have the right sides out, and then we want to fold this under. You can stitch along. What we want to do is we want to be able to stitch along the inside, of the sample. So it really doesn't matter if it's inside or outside, but we just want to be able to see that hemline and follow that all the way around. What you might want to do if you can't see that marking, I seem to not be able to see my line marking anymore, but what you might need to do is use your ruler and just measure it at 1.5. And I would start at that underarm seam and just make sure that you're at 1.5 inches. And I'm a little short, so I need to extend that up a little bit. Okay, measure that. Almost 1.5, adjust it a little bit more. And then I'm just going to put some pins in and just measure this all the way around, making sure that it's at 1.5 inches, 1.5 inch turned up hem. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can kind of eyeball it and kind of come across this and use my 1.5 inch here. It's looking a lot better. Put some pins in at the top, and all I want to do is I want to secure that that this is running around at about that 1.5 inch hemline that the pattern called for. Put some pins in place. All right. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and place my sample underneath of my presser foot, starting at that underarm seam. And I'm actually going to, you're just pretty much putting in a top stitch to secure this into place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go around at 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to start right at that where I made that seam, so right in that seam allowance. And I'm not going to do any back stitching. I'm going to do some of those overlap stitches like we did in our sleeve sample. So I'm just going to go ahead and start there, and I'm just going to run this folded up edge right along that 5/8 inch marking. And when I stop, I want to make sure that my needle is in the down position, and I'm just going to make sure that that line is straight along that 5/8 inch marking on my throat plate and on my clear bobbin cover. And it's important that you keep this fold line straight as you go around, so that when you turn your fabric to the right side, everything will be tucked in place as you want it. Alright, now I'm going around this circle, and I'm getting close. I'm approaching that area where I first started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do some overlap stitches. Maybe overlap about, I think I did about 4 there. Raise up my needle and go ahead and trim my thread tails. And that's all there is to it for doing the self-faced hem. It's a simple kind of turn up and top stitch, and if you want to, you can go ahead and flip that over to the right side, and then you can do a quick press to kind of finalize that, and it was pretty easy, not too bad. One of the things that I do want to share with you is that we did not apply any sort of seam finish or edge finish to this inside of the fabric. That's something that you might want to consider when you're doing your final product. Maybe doing a stitch in pink, or even a fold over and top stitch, a turn and stitch type of edge finish, so that you don't have this raw edge showing. Another thing that you can do to make your hem a little bit stronger is you can put some interfacing behind that. So it's an option, but something to pay attention to depending on what your final product is supposed to look like. So that is your self hem. If you want to, you can go ahead and apply a hem finish here. What I might do is I might just go ahead and use my pinking shears and just trim along this edge so that there is some sort of edge finish here. So, alright, just make sure that you label this and place this in your binder as a self hem, and this is a self hem sleeve finish.